Right now at the bottom of the world, the ice is coming off. Not as a forecast for some distant century. Now, the great ice sheet that covers Antarctica is losing mass faster than at any point since we have been able to measure it, well over 100 billion tons a year, draining into the sea, thinning at the edges, breaking off in slabs the size of cities. Satellites that do nothing but weigh the continent from orbit watch the number fall year after year. And along the coast, where the ice meets the water, the white is pulling back and exposing rock that has not seen daylight in a very, very long time. The official story is climate and warming seas, and that story is true. But there is a clay tablet from the oldest layer of the Sumerian world that describes a land at the far edge of everything, a white land, a land of standing ice, and says that under it, sealed, are gates. Not metaphorical gates. A threshold, the tablet says, closed over and covered with white, the same way the rivers were a covering and the sea was a covering. Something put at the bottom of the world and locked beneath the ice, to stay shut until the white drew back from it. And it gives a condition for when that happens. Not a date on a calendar, a level. The tablet says the gates are revealed in the year the ice falls past the mark, and by what the satellites are measuring right now, the ice has never been closer to that mark in the whole span of human history. Today, 3 things. First, what is actually physically true about Antarctica, that it was not always ice, that there is a whole hidden world of mountains and lakes beneath it, and what has surfaced at its edges as the ice retreats. Second, what the old maps and the old texts said was down there at the bottom of the world, before anyone was supposed to be able to go. And third, the tablet itself, the white land, the gates, and the line that names the year the ice gives them back. Let's go to the bottom of the world. To understand the tablet, you have to start with the continent itself, because almost everything most people believe about Antarctica is wrong in one specific way. They think it has always been like this, a dead, white, frozen waste. It has not. Antarctica is a continent, real rock, a land mass larger than Europe, and for most of its history, it was not frozen at all. It sat in warmer latitudes. It had rivers. It had forests. We have found the fossilized wood, the leaf impressions, the roots of trees that grew in a temperate climate where there is now 2 miles of ice. There were animals. The deep history of Antarctica is green, not white. The ice is recent by the standards of the planet. It built up only after the continent drifted south and the world cooled, and it has advanced and retreated many times since, breathing in and out with the ice ages. We did not deduce this from a distance. The men who first crossed the continent found it in the rock. On Robert Falcon Scott's doomed expedition to the South Pole, as his dying party hauled back across the ice, they kept dragging more than 30 pounds of rock samples on the sledge to the very end. And in those samples were fossil leaves, Glossopteris, an ancient seed fern, proof that this frozen desert had once been a forested land, warm enough for trees. They died with the evidence lying beside them in the tent. Later expeditions found thick coal seams running through the transantarctic mountains, and coal does not form on ice. It forms from buried swamp and forest, from a wet, warm, living landscape pressed down over ages. There are fossilized tree stumps still rooted where they grew, the bones of dinosaurs, the traces of temperate rainforest. For tens of millions of years, Antarctica sat green and breathing. The freeze came late, around 34 million years ago, when the continent finished its drift to the pole, and the ocean around it locked into a circular current that walled it off from the warmth of the rest of the world. Only then did the white begin to come down. The ice is not the old thing here. The forest is the old thing. The ice is only what came over it, so the white is not the continent. The white is a lid that came down over it, and the lid is not thin. The Antarctic ice sheet is, in places, almost 3 miles deep. It holds about 70% of all the fresh water on Earth. If you could lift it off, you would not find a smooth white plain underneath. You would find a landscape, and a strange one. Because beneath that ice there are mountains. Not small ones. Buried in the heart of East Antarctica is a mountain range called the Gamburtsev Mountains, a chain that runs for hundreds of miles and rises to the height of the Alps. Jagged, sharp peaks, with valleys cut by ancient rivers, and not one square inch of it has ever been seen by a human eye, because it is sealed under more than a mile of ice. We know it is there only because we flew instruments over it and read the rock through the ice. An entire alpine range, complete with peaks and valleys, hidden at the bottom of the world. And it is not only mountains. Beneath the ice there is water, liquid water, hundreds of lakes, sealed between the rock and the ice, kept liquid by the pressure and the heat of the earth below. The largest of them, Lake Vostok, is the size of a large lake anywhere on the surface, and it has sat there, sealed off from the sky, for millions of years. There are more than 600 of these subglacial lakes, and rivers running between them, a whole hidden hydrology moving in the dark, under the ice that no one knew existed until our instruments found it. Lake Vostok is worth pausing on because of what it represents. It has been sealed beneath nearly 2.5 miles of ice for something like 15 million years, a body of water cut off from the air, from light, from the rest of the planet, since long before there were human beings of any kind. When Russian scientists finally drilled down through the ice and touched its surface, the question everyone asked was simple and a little frightening. Is anything alive in there, in water that has been sealed in the dark that long? The samples came back ambiguous, fought over, hard to clean of contamination. But they carried genetic traces of life, signatures of organisms, in a place that was supposed to be a sterile tomb. Whatever the final verdict, the principle holds. Antarctica seals things completely, for spans of time the mind can barely hold, and what is sealed is not necessarily dead. The Gamburtsev Mountains carry their own quiet impossibility. Mountain ranges are supposed to wear down. Wind and water and time grind them flat over tens of millions of years. The Gamburtsevs are sharp, jagged, young-looking alpine peaks, and yet they sit in the oldest, most stable heart of the continent, where they should long ago have been ground to stumps. The ice is why they survived. The lid came down and stopped the erosion, froze the whole landscape in place, and kept the mountains as sharp as the day the white first covered them. The ice does not only hide a thing, it preserves it, exactly as it was at the moment of sealing. Hold that picture, a continent that was once green, mountains the size of the Alps, sealed and unseen, hundreds of lakes locked in the dark, a whole world under the lid. And the lid is, right now, getting thinner, because that is the part that connects to the present. As the climate warms, the ice at the edges of Antarctica is retreating, and where it retreats, the land comes back. Coastlines that were buried are reappearing. In the warming years, scientists have watched glaciers pull back and uncover ground, rock, valleys that were under ice within living memory. It is exactly the same process you saw with the drying rivers and the falling sea, water, in another form, pulling back and giving up what it was hiding, and what surfaces is not always what you would expect. As the ice has retreated, expeditions have found the huts and supplies of the first explorers from a century ago, perfectly frozen, the tinned food still stacked on the shelves. True, a small demonstration of how completely the cold keeps whatever it takes. They have found meteorites by the thousands, delivered from space and held on the bare ice for the picking. With radar, they have traced under the ice the buried courses of ancient rivers, canyons deeper than the Grand Canyon, and a network of lakes and channels the size of a country. Every season the instruments map a little more of the hidden continent, and every season the edges give back a little more ground. The bottom of the world is not a blank. It is a sealed archive, and it is slowly, measurably beginning to open. That part is not mythology. That is in the satellite Graf Dmitri, the ice core record, and the fossil wood. Now let us go to what people said was down there, long before any ship reached it. Because here is something genuinely strange and entirely real. Antarctica was not officially sighted until 1820. No human being is supposed to have seen its coastline before the 19th century. And yet there are old maps, real maps in real archives, that appear to show it. The most famous is the Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, compiled, he wrote, from much older source maps, some of them ancient. It shows the coast of South America, and then, at the bottom, a land mass that a number of researchers have argued matches the coastline of Antarctica, specifically Queen Maud Land, as it would look without its ice. Mainstream scholars say it is a misdrawn coast of South America. Others have pointed out that the bays and capes line up disturbingly well with the subglacial coastline we mapped only with modern radar. I am not going to tell you which is true. I am telling you the map exists. It predates the official discovery by 300 years. Its author said he copied it from older charts, and it is in a museum in Istanbul where anyone can see it. Piri Reis was not a mystic. He was a working admiral of the Ottoman Navy, and he wrote his notes in his own hand in the margins of the map, explaining that he had assembled it from about 20 older charts, including, he said, some that went back to the age of Alexander the Great, and a map that had belonged to Columbus. He was describing a chain of inheritance. Older maps copied into newer ones, the originals lost, the knowledge surviving only as a copy of something far more ancient. That is precisely what the Sumerian scribes claimed about their own knowledge, that it had been received, complete from before and guarded without change. And the Piri Reis map is not alone. There are several other late medieval and Renaissance maps, the Oronteus, Phineas, the Buacha, that show a southern continent with features that should not have been known. The pattern across all of them is the same claim, that the knowledge of a land at the bottom of the world, drawn as if its coast were free of ice, came down from older sources that no longer survive. A historian named Charles Hapgood took these maps seriously enough to study them with a team, and even ran them past a United States Air Force cartographic unit, which concluded, controversially and disputed ever since, that several of the charts depicted the subglacial coast of Antarctica with an accuracy that should have been impossible before modern radar survey. The academic world pushed back hard, and the argument has never been settled. But the artifacts themselves are not in dispute. The maps are real, they are old, and on every one of them the claim attached is the same. This came from somewhere older, and there is a reason the bottom of the world keeps its grip on the imagination. In the years right after the Second World War, the United States sent the largest expedition ever mounted to Antarctica, Operation High Jump, more than 40 ships and thousands of men, under a decorated admiral, to a frozen continent with no enemy anywhere on it. The stated purpose was training and mapping. The sheer scale of it struck a lot of people as strange for a place with nothing to fight over. A little over a decade later, the nations of the world signed a treaty that set the entire continent aside, banning military activity, freezing every territorial claim, agreeing in effect that no one would own it and no one would dig into it. None of that is conspiracy, it is documented history. But it does mean that Antarctica is, by international agreement, the least disturbed, least excavated, most deliberately untouched land on the planet. The one continent the whole world agreed in writing to leave shut. A land at the far south. Drawn, free of ice, from sources older than anyone can name. Hold that, because that is exactly what the tablet claims to be, one of those older sources. The Sumerians, of course, never sailed to Antarctica, but the Sumerians had a cosmology with edges, and they put things at those edges. Their world had a far below and a far above, and it had ends, a place where the sun went down and stayed, a land of cold and darkness at the bottom of everything, beyond the last sea. In the descent texts, the underworld is reached by going down and going to the edge, through 7 gates, each one sealed, each one opened only under a specific condition, each one guarded. The Sumerian imagination was full of sealed thresholds at the ends of the earth that were never meant to be opened by the living. The clearest of these is the descent of Inanna. The goddess goes down to the great below, the Kur, the land of no return, and to reach it she must pass through 7 gates. At each gate the gatekeeper stops her, and at each gate something is stripped from her: her crown, her measuring rod, her jewels, her robe, until she arrives naked and powerless before the throne of the dead. 7 sealed gates, each with a guardian, each opened only by the correct word, each a checkpoint on a road the living were forbidden to walk. The Sumerians did not picture the great below as empty space. They pictured it as a sealed, guarded place, with a sequence of locked doors and a strict protocol for passing each one. And they were absolutely clear about the rule beneath all of it. There are doors at the edges of the world that are shut for a reason, and the worst thing a human being can do is force one open before its time. And there is a tradition running through the Apkallu texts that, after the flood, the knowledge and the things of the time before were not only sunk beneath the water, some were carried, the texts say, to the ends, set down, at the edges of the world, at the top and the bottom, in places no one would go, and sealed there. Covered. Kept. Set down at the edge and covered. Hold that phrase, because that is exactly what the tablet describes. The tablet sits, like the others in this strange series, under the designation the curators, reserved for texts that have been read but do not fit, not a hymn, not a king's account, not an ordinary list. Its language is the same second-order vocabulary, the words that belong at once to measurement and to the gods. And its structure is, again, the structure of a record kept over time, a column of values, each paired with a phrase. It names a land it calls the White Land, the land of standing water made hard, the land at the foot of the world where the cold never leaves. This is not a place the Sumerians knew from travel. It is a place they say they were told about, in the same breath as the Abzu and the gates of the underworld. And it says that on this white land, before the kingship, a threshold was set, and then covered, deliberately, not with water this time but with white, with ice brought down over it as a seal, to keep what was behind it until accounting was complete. And then, as always, it begins to count. The early entries in the column rise. Each value is higher than the one before, and beside each one is a phrase that translates, roughly, as the white deepens. That is the Ice Age written as a measurement, the lid coming down, thickening over the threshold, mark by mark, recorded the way an engineer records a level rising. The white deepens, the gate goes under, the seal sets, and then, at the top of the rising column, the phrase changes. The white is full, it reads, the gate is sealed, the count is set, and a second column begins, and the values in the second column descend. The tablet, having recorded the ice coming down, now records the level it expects the ice to fall back to, slowly, in fractions of the SAR, the great unit, of 3,600, across a span so long it has to be broken into pieces to be written at all, a countdown, not of years but of depth, of how much white still stands over the threshold. And it treats that level as the only clock that matters, because to whoever wrote this, the calendar was meaningless. What mattered was the mark. When the white fell back to a certain line, the covering would thin to nothing, and the gate would be exposed. There is something worth lingering on in those descending marks. They are not spaced like years, or like the reigns of kings. They are spaced in fractions of the SAR, that Sumerian great count of 3,600, the number that runs all through their reckoning of time and the heavens, as if whoever carved them was not timing a season or a lifetime, but counting down across a span so vast it could only be written by breaking it into pieces. Tick by tick, fraction by fraction, the white standing lower in each entry than the one above it, the whole column sliding toward a single value at the bottom. And these are not vague guesses. They are precise, ordered, internally consistent, the work of someone who believed the level mattered more than anything else they could record, and who plainly expected that one day someone would be standing at the foot of that column, checking the number against the ice. I want to be careful here. Because this is the point where a story like this can run far ahead of what the evidence will carry. So let me draw the line clearly and honestly. What is documented is this: Antarctica was once ice-free and forested. Beneath the ice there is a hidden landscape of alpine mountains and hundreds of sealed lakes. The ice is right now losing mass at the fastest rate we have measured, and retreating at the edges to expose long-buried ground. And there exist real, pre-modern maps, the Piri Reis chief among them, that appear to show a southern continent, drawn as if without ice, compiled from sources their own authors described as ancient. What is interpretation is the rest. That the rising marks are the Ice Age, and the falling marks are a countdown. That the white land is Antarctica. That the threshold is a real place. That anything at all waits behind it. I am not going to tell you the tablet is a prophecy. I am going to tell you what it says, and let the ice speak for itself. And what it says is that there is a year. The descending count does not trail off. It terminates. The final entry is marked differently from all the others. And the phrase changes one last time. It is no longer the white deepens, and no longer the white thins. The final line reads, in the most defensible translation offered, the white is lifted, and the year is set. The year is set. Not a year the scribe chose, a year the ice chooses. The tablet ties the date to the level. It says in effect that the year is whatever year the ice falls, past the final mark. The Sumerians could not have known when that would be. They had no way to foresee a warming climate, or the rate at which a modern world would thin the ice. They did not set a date on a calendar. They set it on a condition, and they trusted the ice to keep the time. That is what makes it different from every dated prophecy you have heard. It is not anchored to a calendar that can drift or be reinterpreted. It is anchored to a physical level anyone, in any century, can go and measure. You do not need to translate it, you only need to weigh the ice. And the ice has never, in the span of human history, been falling as fast as it is falling now. So what does the tablet say is behind the gate? What stands on the white land when the covering lifts? Here the text becomes deliberately restrained, and that restraint is itself the loudest thing about it. It does not describe a monster under the ice. It does not describe an army. The Sumerians had vivid language for both, and did not use it. What the tablet describes behind the gate is, in its own words, that which was set down before the kingship and sealed beneath the white, so that it would keep until the counting was complete. And the verb for keep is the same one they used for storing grain against a coming famine, something put into storage at the edge of the world, with its uncovering tied to the level of the ice. What it does say carries the same logic as the rest of the series. The things of the time before the flood were not destroyed, the tradition holds. They were distributed and sealed, some beneath the sweet water, some beneath the sea, and some, this tablet says, carried to the cold edge and locked under the white, precisely because it was the one place a drowning world's flood could never reach, and the one place no ordinary people would ever go. The ice was not the danger, the ice was the vault. The safest place to store something, meant to outlast a flood, is the one place on Earth where water arrives already frozen and never leaves. The tablet does not say what it is. It says only what it is for and who set it there. The same ones, the tradition says, who carried the things of the time before to the ends of the earth and sealed them, and who said they would know it was time to return for them when the white that hid their work had finally drawn back. When the white had drawn back. The white is drawing back. We are watching it by the billion tons from orbit every year. Let me bring this down to the ground you can stand on. Antarctica was green before it was white. Under the ice is a landscape of buried mountains and sealed lakes we found only with modern instruments. The ice is retreating now, faster than ever measured, uncovering coastlines that were hidden. And there are real maps, centuries older than the official discovery of the continent, that drew its ice-free coast from sources their makers called ancient. That part is not mythology. That part is in the archives and the satellite data. The tablet from the first cities simply claims to be one of those ancient sources. To have known there was a land at the bottom of the world. to have understood the ice not as the continent's nature, but as a covering brought down over a threshold and counted as it would one day fall, and to have written down the one thing it believed would happen when the white was finally gone. Maybe it is a coincidence of translation, and a misdrawn map, and a story we want to be true. Or maybe the first people who learned to write recorded, among the very first things worth keeping, a level at the bottom of the world, and told us, across the ice, and the millennia, to watch it. The edges are bare rock now, where they were white a lifetime ago. The glaciers are pulling back. The continent that was once green is ton by ton beginning to shed its lid, and the white, by every measurement we have, is almost off the mark. If you want to follow where the cuneiform record actually leads, not the speculation, but the texts themselves, line by line, subscribe. We go one tablet deeper every time. The ice is still falling, and we will be watching the mark.